Memorial Big Paul Meyer oil spill. All right, so what we wanted to do was, one, for the new guys, a couple of them that are here, is to kind of give them some background as to why we call this the oil spill. So who's got the best story just to say how we changed the name from oil change to oil spill?
Oh, I know.
You know?
I do too.
Everybody.
Not everybody.
I think everybody really knows it. I mean, the gasket and all he put on the rear end there, and the gasket didn't hold and oil went all over the floor. That's the one you talking about?
I don't know. I think there might be more than one.
There are three.
Happened 3 years in a row.
Yeah.
Herb started it.
3 years in a row.
Yeah.
Right.
Herb did it the first 2 years,
Herb,
and Scott
yeah.
Keller the third.
Yeah. Herb did it the first year.
Well, go ahead, tell the story.
Oh,
Scott Keller did it once?
he had just changed the oil and everything in his car. And after he changed the oil and put fresh oil and all in there, you know, he looked back and he saw that the rear end he thought was leaking a little bit. So he drained the rear end. And after he drained the rear end, he realized that he probably shouldn't have done that. Because now the first thing you know, he's got grease all over the floor out of the rear end. And that's 60 weight grease. Anyway, so it's coming out all over the floor there, so he's down there cleaning it up. And Paul came in, excuse me, and asked him what happened. He told him he was not a happy camper. And above and beyond that, then I don't know.
So that was one.
That was one. I don't know what the other two were. I thought it was almost the same thing the next year, but go ahead. No, it wasn't.
No, these happened before I started going to the oil spill.
Okay.
And I guess for, you know, the ones that haven't, we used to do this at Paul Meyer's garage.
Right.
Paul Meyer's garage was right across the street from the Bridgeton landfill. Which,
Yeah.
which could be some contribution to why he is sick the way he was sick
He owned
before
a
he
paint
paid.
place.
Yeah, so, right. So anyways, there was 2 other oil spills.
Right.
Go ahead.
Herb was putting oil in his car. He drained it, opened one of the cans of oil, and knocked it over, all over the
Oh,
floor.
I remember that. I do remember that.
Yeah.
Knocked over the big thing that comes up, extends up to get the oil out and all.
Oh, that's right. He knocked the whole thing over.
He knocked the whole thing over.
Oh, I thought he just had a drain bucket on top of the ladder.
Well, it was a drain. It was the drain
Yeah.
pot or bucket, whatever you want to call it, that extends up.
He just,
And as it extended up, he bumped it,
Over
went
with.
right on over. Yeah, I remember that now. I forgot about that.
How far could you hear him cuss?
He was not a happy camper.
Paul was the one that was upset.
Yeah, Paul was not a happy camper. Herb just kind of stood back and
Well,
looked
when
at him and
Herb
said,
shut the
"Oh."
garage door on his open trunk lid on his 37
That was at
and
home.
fed it at home,
No, that's home.
I was in Scott City and I think I could hear him cuss all
Yeah,
the way.
that was at home. Yeah.
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 What was the third one? I know there was 3 at Paul Meyer's.
Well, Scott Keller did it the next year.
I don't remember.
Scott Keller, what did Scott do?
Well, my recollection of it was that he just had a drain pan and there was like a 4-foot step ladder, and he had the drain pan up on the step ladder. And he drained the oil in there, and then somehow or other he kicked the ladder or whatever, and the whole thing fell on the floor.
That was number 3.
That was the third.
Whoa.
So we did it 3 years in a row and decided to change
Paul
the
was
name
not
to the
happy.
oil spill. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's how we got from oil change to oil spill. And so since this is the Paul Meyer Memorial,
Right.
anybody have a favorite story about Paul Meyer that they would like to share? My first meeting of Paul was at the very first meeting I attended. And Paul was probably the first person who came up to me. He introduced himself and he says, "What kind of car do you have?" And I says, "A 1937 Buick Coupe." And then it was, "Okay, enough about you, let me tell you about me." And then I got to hear about his whole collection of cars.
Oh, wow.
So Paul was an easy person to listen to. So that's,
The only thing Ed and I used to do the cooking, okay? Got this great big old cooker, I guess you'd call it out there, you know. I think he took 100 ration pan, or can, cut it in half, made, what they call 100 gallon? What were those big
Yeah.
drums?
50
He took a
gallon.
big
Yeah.
drum,
55 gallon.
Yeah.
There you go.
Oil
Cut the
barrel.
thing in half, put hinges on it, that's what we cooked with. So we thought that's kind of cool. The only thing is that Ed and I said to him one day, said, you know, we're cooking all this food here, and is there any way that we can take and put the briquettes down on the bottom, maybe make a little tray? Because what we had two great big brake drums. That's all we had. So we had a brake drum over here and a brake drum over here, and we filled them up with briquettes. And we put the lighter fluid in there and light them up. Now, the only problem we had was we could never get the food the proper temperature on there because of that. So we said to him, said, Paul, how about if we make a little tray for down underneath here? I said, Ed and I can do it. We'll make it, and then we'll put the briquettes on that. Oh, no. He said, this is the first way that we did it. I want to keep it that way.
Yeah.
And it stayed that way till the day he died.
Yeah.
So that's the way we used to cook all the food, with those two big old Buick brake drums. One on one side and one on the other. Never got any heat in the middle.
Wasn't there a story about Paul and Ed getting the pickup truck and
Yeah.
somebody getting hurt?
Ran over, ran him
I talked to Ed not too long ago,
ran
and I told him I'm going to give him a call and get that whole story, and I want to publish that in the Gazette again. I think it's been in there before, but I know they were loading it on the trailer, and it got away from him, and it ran over Ed. Ed damn near killed him.
Oh, yeah.
He broke 3 ribs, and
Yeah.
I mean he got
It went completely over him.
yeah. He ended up in the emergency room.
Yep.
That was serious. You know, Paul suffered terribly. He didn't really let us know just how much he
He had
suffered.
a lot of cancer.
Yeah, he did. It started with prostate cancer, and it was probably about 10 years ago he got it. And, you know, at the time they did what they did, and they didn't get everything, and it just kept on going. But I knew that Paul's days were numbered. And I just thought, you know, I really need to give Paul a call. So I called him up one day, and he could hardly talk. He just, you gotta talk like that. You know, we just chatted for a little bit, and I said, Paul, you've been a really good friend. And he just started crying.
Yeah.
And he said, well, thanks for the call,
That's
Ted.
right.
And then it was about a week later that he died.
Oh, my word.
Yeah.
Down the street from Paul's, there's still a junkyard. I guess it's still there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When I was in high school, they had a 34 or 5 Buick in there that was pretty complete. Buddy of mine, we were getting parts off a Packard bathtub. They offered me that Buick for $40. It would have been something to try to get it moved out, but it was all there.
Wow.
$40.
So did you get it?
No. No, I bought a 37 for 25.
Yeah.
Well, when I was a kid, I used to buy cars from the junkyard, $15. If I got a
Yeah.
good battery, I got it for another $5. They'd tow it home for me. I'd take the thing home and I'd fix it up and sell it. And I used to do that
Oh,
when
I
I was
did
a
that
kid.
too.
12 years old. I was doing
I
it.
was
I couldn't even
14
drive
when
them.
I started. I couldn't either.
Yeah.
I'd ride my bicycle up and down the alleys. If
Yeah.
I'd see an expired license,
Yeah.
I'd knock on the door because the junkyard charged 15 to haul them
Oh,
away.
yeah. Yeah.
And I'd say, I'll give you $20 for it. And they go, that dumb kid's gonna buy it.
Yeah.
In those days, you could
Oh,
get
yeah.
a fuel pump or something for $3.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And you'd sell them to your buddies at high school for $7,500. We were making money hand over fist.
Well, my dad was a master mechanic, a policeman, and a motorcycle racer. Held the motorcycle racing championship, the whole state of Missouri back in 1911, 1917, somewhere in that area. Had a little Indian bike, and he would race that thing around the track, and they called him Daredevil Smith, because every time he'd hit the curve on there with that bike, on that dirt track, he'd give it a shot of ether. And that son of a gun would just fishtail
Yeah.
as it's going around the curve. Nobody else ever did that. So he held a championship for 5 solid years.
So, anybody have any more Paul Meyer memories they would
Sorry
like?
about that.
His hat.
His hat?
He always wore the coolest little straw hat, and especially when he was in the Buick BCA National, wasn't he an office holder?
He was
He always
president.
was photographed with that hat, so that's my memory.
I have one. I was talking to Paul one time
I think most of you know he was an Air Force veteran, and he said he used to, when he was stationed in the States, he had a job at a junkyard. He'd go in and work on cars, try and get them running if he could, or just part them out after hours. One day he missed his duty, so he got restricted to base for a while, about 2 weeks. So he's telling me, yeah, he said, they come by and check on me, and then in the evening, I'd sneak off base, go over, do my job. He said, I was making all kinds of money. I was hoping it never ended.
Steve?
We're good.
I belong to the Kiwanis organization, and I understand that Paul joined the Kiwanis probably 4 or 5 years before he passed away, and I went over to his installation when he was installed as president of the Kiwanis Club, and they had a nice big party, and he came out of there dressed with a I guess it was a Firestone thing that you would put on display, and you would put tires in it, and it was I guess plastic, but what he did is he cut a hole in it and put it over his head, and he walked out as a stack of tires at the Kiwanis Club, which didn't surprise me at all.
Scott, we were just talking about you. We were talking about the oil spill, and weren't you the third year of spilling the oil?
It was some time ago.
What well, nobody really remembers the story. Are you willing to expose your sins here to us? How that all happened?
Well, I think the lift over Paul's place was extremely tiny. So just trying to get in and out of the vehicle and around the vehicle, even though it's not a very big vehicle, was a challenge. So, plus I use a little longer than stock filter on my car. So trying to weasel that up in front-wheel drive car, a little bit of a challenge. It's more of a challenge on the ground, believe it or not. But yeah, so I didn't come down cleanly with the filter and dropped a half-full oil filter. So that's all.
Okay, anybody else?
Yeah, I've got.
Okay.
Used to have at Sinclair Buick, a Buick show every year. And I just bought my Buick, and I walked down there and started talking to one guy, and he asked what I had, and I told him a 35. And we were talking, then all of a sudden I said, I'm modified. The guy walked away from me. Then I went to somebody else, was talking to them, and when I said modified, they walked away from me. So I said, to heck with this. So I left, and I was at, my car was at a body shop in Wentzville, and I was down there, and a guy walks in and says, you got a Buick? And I said, yeah. And he says, you gonna join the Buick Club? I said, no. And he says, why not? And I told him. And well, this was Paul. And Paul said, let's go out to lunch sometime. So a couple weeks later, we went out to lunch. He paid for it, apologized, and convinced me to join the Buick Club.
Wow.
Very good.
Cool.
Biggest mistake he ever made.
No kidding.
How many years ago was that? How many years ago?
That was 15 years ago.
15.
Anybody talking to you yet?
No.
I remember when you came into Truckerburger and ran over one of those.
Let's not go there.
Back to the body shop. He was a fairly new member then.
That was my first meeting.
Yeah. Good show.
Thanks, guys. Anything else that anybody can think of? Bobby, you always got something smart to say.
Well,
I won't-
we took a trip down to Kansas one time, him and I. We were going down to pick up I think it was a 35. That was kind of pieced together, half truck, half car. And the time that we got in the truck, traveled that Kansas, Paul was just talking and talking and talking. I never had a single thing to say. He just talked the whole way. the only thing I said, am I gonna get to drive for a while? He says, no. And he just kept driving and talking. We had to spend the night in some hotel on the way back, and after we picked the car up, came back, and he just talked my head off. That's my trip. Yeah.
We went to, the club had a tour, a day tour down to St. Genevieve, that's where he's from,
Yeah.
and his wife. And, in fact, he took us by the old homestead and the school and everything where he went to school and everything down there in Cape Girardeau. And, it was pretty cool. We had a nice day down there.
He still has a bunch of his old tractors
Well,
down
we
there,
went to
doesn't
his farm.
Yeah.
He's got a farm, he and his brother, I think.
Yeah.
And his brother lives there. And yeah, Paul has a bunch of stuff down there. And some old tractors too,
he? Yeah.
that some of they've restored. And, but he's got his own junkyard, or piles of cars back there in the back that they're parked all over the place. 'Cause he had a 57 Mercury that I wanted to look at. It was too far gone. I told him no thanks.
I think that's about it. Let's go spill some oil.
Very nice.